928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily...
Stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff, conscious of, Oh, hi, I'm just doing the opening. Hold on one second. Okay. So you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show, and I'm your host, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff, and you are listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Everything that we do, all the hosts and everybody that works on our network, we volunteer our time 100%. So we rely on your donations. So you can go to the funding page. You can look at all the different ways that you can actually help support us. We have advertising. We have heirloom seeds. And if you just want to slap us a couple bucks, that's great too. Also, while you're at freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, you can go to the schedule, click on Studio A, and then you can see the 2 editions on my radio show that I do every week. And there's Wednesday edition that is at noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then you're listening today to the Saturday edition. And we are 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anyway, you can see the thumbnail. It's a bee flying towards the flower. And then you click on that, and there's a back page, gives some information, contact information if you want to contact me for any reason. Anyway, today I have a guest that I have been watching her information flow back and forth over the internet for a while now. And I reached out to her several months ago to see if she would come on the show and actually talk about this work and the technology that she's utilizing for sound health. And do you pronounce your name Sharry or Sharry?
Sharry.
Okay, and so this is Sharry Edwards. So what I usually do is I have people, give the information of where people can find you, like websites and stuff at the beginning, because I get a lot of people who want to look that up while we have the conversation so that they can kind of peruse your information. So do you want to give them your websites or areas that you think are most important where they should hunt you out in this work, sound health?
Great. While we were putting everything together in the research, we created soundhealthoptions.com and then realized that we need to turn over this information to the public to do for themselves. So that one is soundhealthportal.com.
Great. So do you want to give people kind of a little bit of a background of how you kind of came to where you're at now and the work you're doing?
Great question. It comes from a very esoteric perspective, in that since I can ever remember, I've been able to hear sounds out of people's ears. And based on that, we created a whole company that can tell you what to do with that sound from your ears and what it tells people about you and your health. And I think that's how a lot of intuitives work. They hear this sound, which is above normal hearing, and it gives them information. So when I finally figured out that not everybody can do this, I was kind of making fun of it and saying, this is so easy. Why can't you listen to this? And if you repeat the information that you hear again, it'll tell you something. And I was so egotistical about this. I said, anybody can do this. And I lost the ability for 3 days. I thought I would go crazy because I couldn't pick up anything on anybody and what they were thinking and what they were doing. And I just discovered at that point that sound coming from your ear, which is really identified also by the sounds of your voice, could give us a great foundation, could tell us when somebody else is lying, could drop us into self-health, a better way to be in touch with who we really are. And I think we've lost that. And then we did all that, and the next thing we wanted to give it all to the public. So that's what the portal was about. People can get their vocal print done, and it tells them what that means, what they want, what they're good at, what they don't want. And so we began that interchange with the public and then started teaching classes. And we now think it is a way to entertain the idea of self-health in our personal terrain, whether it's what we believe, our family, what's going on politically. So we want to give people the tools and solutions that will help them define who they are, what their choices need to be, and give them some solutions to the turmoil that I personally think our country is in because of all this political infighting. Some of it's totally crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that some of it is totally crazy. So I haven't had a chance to utilize anything off the website because when I connected with you guys, I started beginning a medical herbalism program, and while crafting medicine, I go out in nature and I collect it and I make it. So I've had this whole program that I've been in. So I haven't had a chance to actually go onto your portal and use. And you guys had, Saturday type events, and I couldn't actually come to those because it was about at the same time my radio show was on Saturdays. So
we record everything so people can come back and listen to it.
Oh, well, see, that's great information. That's great information.
I love this idea of medical herbalism. We should have you on our show.
Well, I've been doing a lot of herbal work for a long time, but now I'm really going after it and watching how everything works in the environment. It's kind of teaching me how I was kind of working on large-scale restoration and been a traditional osteopath and nutritionalist for a long time, but the environment is teaching me, a lot of things about how we need to work together, and how the environment actually in places where it's doing really well works together.
In our environment's being so polluted with glyphosates and all these toxic herbs and planes flying over us and causing all kinds of havoc. And then our personal terrain, vaccinations, demands on what food we can eat or not eat, running the small guys out of business. I think we are being encroached upon, and because we as Americans are supposed to be polite and truthful and all that, we don't push back. So all these loudmouth hooligans are just encroaching more and more into what we are. What's going on in New York? A couple of years ago, you couldn't drink soda. Well, I don't drink soda, but I want to have the right to. That sort of fizzled out. Now they're demanding vaccinations to everybody. If you're going to be in public, you have to have a vaccination. And if you don't vaccinate your kids, the government will come in. That's taking away our choices. And as I see it, the enemy is the ones who are taking away our choices. I just listened to something Kamala Harris said, that she is going to reduce the amount of meat we're allowed to eat. Where does the government have the right to say that? If people want meat, ought not be their choice? I mean, that's crazy. There's about 1,000 people all in Congress trying to run 320 million people. We need to draw a line and fight back and say, I'm going to have this kind of herbs in my front yard, and you can't come and tell me I can't grow them.
Yeah. And, we have to do it for the environment. It's past the time where we make those choices for ourselves and our own health. I mean, now it's past that, because now if we don't start working with the environment and healing the environment, humans aren't going to be living very long on planet Earth. And that's kind of like where it's at. I see a lot of detriment in nature that, is starting to really kind of disturb me. And I'm going to kind of go out on a kind of a duty limb, but I actually talk to plants, and a lot of them are very confused and concerned about what's happening to them genetically, even the ones that are out in nature. And so they're very concerned about what's going on right now. So that's kind of like out there, but for some people. So do you, when you're, doing so your technology, basically the person, I mean, what do they say? How does it work with the voice analysis?
Well, we stick a microphone in front of their face, and we say, talk about your health or your dog or whatever, and give us 30 seconds of your vocal print. And then we allow the computer to see what frequencies are there. It's sort of like sour notes in a song, and the frequencies that are too high or too low tell us something. And we've been working on this for 25, 30 years, but it wasn't until 2004 that we were able to say people with the same problems and issues and pathogens have similar, if not identical, vocal anomalies, sour notes. So we know that people with cancer, 100% of them that come in here with cancer have three things at issue: calcitonin, catalase, and ACTH, which is an adrenal hormone. And once we figure that out, we can say, if you're having problems in your voice with those three things and you haven't developed cancer, you're probably on the way to it. Let's stop it now by looking at your Krebs cycle, your energy cycle of the body. Let's get that up and running, create the energy so your body fights against all of this pollution and garbage that is likely causing the cancer.
That's a big thing that I do. I work with the brain, and I reboot people's systems and drop them, down out of the heavy hormonal negative production, and then I teach them how to generate power. Those I understand both the things that you said. I'm like, all right, somebody else that has it dialed in. So I have lots of questions. So have you seen an increase of certain types of illness as you've watched more widespread chemtrail spraying? Do you see like elevations in certain types of diseases? Or, like with vaccines and things like that? Do you see like when there's a big push towards some of these things happening in our environment? Do you see a huge increase in certain types of their notes being off?
Absolutely. And also the timeline. When we look at a grandmother that has breast cancer at 60, her daughter comes in with breast cancer at 40, and the granddaughter comes in with breast cancer at 20. So things are being sped up as to what's going on. And a lot of pollution causing Alzheimer's and dementia. When you look at some of the studies at glyphosate, it shows that the glyphosate breaks down the blood-brain barrier, allowing more unnecessary, unwanted proteins into the brain, and the brain creates fat around it so that it doesn't hurt the brain, but then that turns into Lewy proteins and causes dementia. And we can see that years ahead of time.
Wow.
Your voice is a holographic representation of everything that happens to you. Your vocal cords go through the parasympathetic nerve bundle that goes straight to the brain to keep everything in stasis. So in looking at somebody like Robin Williams, we saw 5 years early that he had some sort of dementia. And I was on a national show the day after he killed himself. And I said, I don't think it's depression like everybody's saying. He had some sort of dementia. And all they just poo-pooed that idea all over the place. And I said, well, I have proof from his vocal print. I compared it to other people who had dementia, and he fits. He fits the pattern. The next day, his wife announced that he had, I think she said, Parkinson's, which has a form of dementia that goes with it. And the autopsy, they proved it, and then we proved that it was Lewy proteins. Alzheimer's, Lewy proteins. Alzheimer's is sometimes genetic, sometimes zinc and choline, and we can look at that. But the Lewy proteins are a little different. You see a lot of it come out of England. It's inability to use proteins in the body, and then it gets stuck in the brain. So different kinds of things we're finding. When you look at breast cancer, there are so many different issues, so many different patterns, and we can find your pattern, then we can help you back it off. The same with vaccines. Andrew Molden proved, he's an MD and a PhD in brain chemistry. I don't remember what it is. But he proved that immunizations cause micro strokes because he was looking at kids' brains before and after. And he stated that autism is a young person's Alzheimer's. And as soon as he announced this, they tried to discredit him, which if you don't have any facts, you go after the person's personality. And then he was found suicided. So the work didn't get out. Sharry Tenpenny is carrying on his work. But they just tried to destroy anybody who wants to go against vaccines. Look at what's happening with Facebook and Google and some of the Google whistleblowers. There's a whole pattern going on to keep us from having the right information and what to do about it. And they're tearing down people's sites that are against vaccines. Well, why? How'd that come up in America that we're going to burn books and burn information? That's not American. And that's what our website's trying to do, give people the software and the training so they can make decisions about who's telling the truth.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, that's why I do my show. I mean, mostly what I do and my practice and just all the stuff I do is I'm trying to educate the public, about choices. One of the things that I've learned this summer was how, really identified for myself in the kind of work that I do, like one of the major contributors for our health problems, and that is the convenience. And the convenience has really destroyed our health because we go to a place and buy the stuff we need, which keeps us in a looping cycle of money, constantly having to create the money, which means, not taking care of your health, working, a lot of hours, having a lot of other types of stress that we normally, shouldn't have really on our bodies because it keeps us in that prime, more of the primitive type stresses, the flight fight response. But, for example, there's a plant called teasel that I have learned to love this year. And if you saw it, you would think, wow, that's a mean plant. That plant is probably not friendly. It probably is not good to take, but it actually can cure autoimmune system diseases, like, for example, Lyme disease, even the bad Lyme disease, because of how it works in the body. Now, the leaves are edible, but when you taste it, so I was with a friend of mine and I've been waiting all summer to eat these leaves, because I know that they're edible. I could eat them in a salad or whatever else, but, and they have, little pointy things on them, like, thorns. And so you have to fold leaves in a certain way, and then you start to crunch them in your mouth so that you avoid getting your mouth torn up, with the spikes. But it was so unbelievably bitter. Like, it was like, oh my God, like you would have to have like kind of a certain kind of palate, right, in order to eat the whole thing and actually swallow it. And my friend was laughing. We were laughing about it about how awful it tasted. And I said, but it's bitter. So there's so many plants that are edible out there around us, and they're all bitter because we would have eaten a lot of plants that would have been bitter. And you can make herbal remedies from them called bitters. And that what they do is they actually promote proper digestion, right? But because we don't eat these in our diet, we end up not having enough bitter in our diet. And so then our gallbladder fails. And then we end up having the gallbladder removed instead of actually, eating things that have more bitter.
Can you spell the name for me? And I will look it up and give you its frequency and see what's really happening.
I would love that because I wrote my final paper on it. So it would be very exciting. Because I watched it all summer and it just became my friend. You know what I mean? Like, just became an ally of mine. So it's TEASEL.
Teasel. Okay. I will get back to you after the show. I love this kind of.
So how do you look up its? Yeah. How do you look up its? How do you know? How are you going to tell what its frequency is?
I'm going to break it down into its constituent parts and then decode that and make it into a math formula and then look up in our database what that same math formula relates to everything else. The body is so incredibly redundant. When you look at underarm fat, under the top, that is the tricep, I think. But it's the same frequency as elastase, and it causes high blood pressure because the elastase can't be used by the body, and then that in turn breaks into insulin resistance. So just by what the body is telling us about the redundancy, we can make a lot of changes or help make changes in people's diets. One of the programs we give away to people is a nutritional analysis. They can have it on the portal, or they can take one of our free classes and have the software right on their computer so they can look at their nutrition every day and what they need to have more of or less of. The body will tell you. Your intuition will too, but we've sort of not paying attention to our intuition, or at least most people aren't.
Well, and I look at the body, doing a lot of structural medicine. That's kind of my thing, connecting things back up to the brain hard drive so it can be picked back up. And then giving the body the, data and information or nutrition component, to actually help to run those systems that are down. But the body is an incredible machine. And it's interesting how we fall into allowing the medical system, and, anyone that knows me knows that I really hate Western medicine with a kind of a passion, but they will just talk you into like taking out some of your organs. For example, they'll say, well, your gallbladder really isn't functioning and you're having symptoms of the gallbladder not functioning. Maybe you're vomiting periodically, or, you have these symptoms, but it can be a really easy thing, even if the gallbladder is not really working, to actually, get it back up and going. Like, eating things that are going to bitter stuff, working with bitters and digestive stuff, even, ginger, a lot of these other things that they use in Indian medicine, Ayurvedics. And then also being able to actually work on the spine and, work with those nerve passages and getting it like hooked back up to the brain so the brain will pick it back up. Because in my work, you're absolutely talking about how these things cause strokes, strokes. This is what I see in people, and what happens, the brain doesn't want to, say, for example, the person, fell on their tailbone, 20 years ago. And as a result of that fall, the spine, the vertebrae have closed off the nerve passage, say, to the liver and gallbladder area. And so that liver and gallbladder goes asleep. It doesn't get regenerated by the brain because it's not being picked up by the brain anymore because the nerve passage is closed off. And then the simple thing of starting to open that back up and getting information flowing in that spinal channel can actually cause, regeneration from, the brain getting down there. But so many people are fooled, by that they have systems that are, like cars, I guess, where you just take parts out and put parts in.
With a famous case, Dr. Russ Rudy, who he had MS, they said, and told him to go home and die. And he had heard about us, doesn't live very far away. And our computer says he does not have MS, does not match one MS person. What he has is an injury to his spine. And the doctor said, no, that didn't happen. So we gave him the frequencies anyway for that part of the spine. We can give you all the spine together to wake up the spine by frequencies, by sound. And so he later remembered that he had an injury to his spine 20-some years ago in a skiing accident. Now, he came to us on a scooter. We gave him the frequencies of the spot the computer said was the damaged spine portion. And from Thanksgiving to the next April, I think, 4 or 5 months, he had regrown all of his nerves from his waist down. And that's impossible. But if you figure out the right frequency, you can match colors, you can match food, you can match diseases. And then when you do things intuitively, you're probably hearing something from the body. These computer programs just confirm it. And then you go out and eat the foods that has those nutrients in it. It's just an incredible way to look at the body. And we also look at the magnetic potential through the interstitium. I think that's where there's a lot of connection made. I think the interstitium takes care of the magnetic potential. Like electricity, there's 440 or 220 electric or whatever, and there's a sheathing on the outside of the wire. And that sheathing is part of the magnetic control, because you can have all this electricity going on, and a lot of people are sensitive to it. And if it isn't controlled, then they get all these symptoms that are nondescript, and the doctor tries to discount. So we think acupuncture, laying on of hands, all of that deals with changing that interstitium. Have you ever cut up a chicken and it's slimy right underneath the skin, sort of slimy? But it's a system in the body, and that's the interstitium. And that's how laying on of hands can make a difference. It's the magnetic potential you try to fix with food and massage and whatever, and then the body heals itself.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. I been doing acupuncture for a long time, and I actually have developed kind of a new technique that I call structural acupuncture that targets, the areas like that need to be, like picked back up by the body. And it's amazing, like what it can do. But yeah, I'm in agreement there. I'm sure that the sound healing, technology is, a little bit of better, because, there aren't, if the people that I used to go to, I'm 50 now, and I've been practicing for 30 years. So I've had a lot of amazing teachers teach me the things that I know. And a lot of them were really old. And also I've studied with a lot of native people with old traditional stuff as well. Like being able to heal fractured bones in a spine using a drum in a short period of time. So, but nowadays it's very difficult for people in the United States to find really good old practitioners that, could do a lot of the stuff. So it's nice to hear, that you have, technology where people can go in and they can, figure out what's going on with them. And then, you guys have the computer kind of help to work up protocols on how to get better. And I'd say probably 100% of the people that I have had in my practice over 30 years that were diagnosed with MS, not one of them had MS. It was always some kind of spinal injury that was never actually healed. But the problem is that when people go on to the medications, then it's going to treat the body as if it has MS. So there's all those energetic signals, right, that can actually conjure that illness into that body because of those steps towards it, right? And what the mind thinks, I think plays a huge role in it as well. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, a lot of people want us to do their work, but we like the idea of teaching people to take care of themselves and their neighbors and whoever. We really don't tell people what is, I don't even know how to say that. We don't tell them anything they don't already know or feel or intuit. We just confirm it. And the only way we want to give them sound to counter what the body's going on is if they're too weak to do it themselves, or as a baby that can't. And so we try to teach them or send them to somebody who does drumming, which is the rhythm. That's the heart issue, and we can test that. And then the frequencies, the actual note, that relates to the brain. But you said something a minute ago, the brain is the central processing unit. Absolutely, and that's what we have been able to jump in or interfere with so that they couldn't walk. We give them a sound and they can walk. Or they have an allergy, and we can identify that allergy and then go back and look at the mast cells and see where that came from. So we try to go to a root cause, because people are being messed up by even man-made electricity. They get messed up in their nerves because that electricity is a node of B. And people who are susceptible to the note of B are going to be vulnerable. So we're just confirming and teaching people to do their own thing so they don't have to be dependent on us.
Yeah. No, and that's what I tell people all the time. It's like this, what I'm helping you with is determined on, you changing your lifestyle. Because, I could help you, but then, if you don't change your lifestyle, like I'm not helping you to figure out ways to change your lifestyle that you're doing it. One of the things was a big time that I was going into people's backyards. I went back and got my biodynamic certification based off Rudolf Steiner's work. He has a lot of ideas about frequency and, things like that. Rudolf Steiner. But, and also with water, we deal with a lot of Victor Schallenberger's type work, like water frequency and restoring it back for people. But people will come back, and have something different. If they're not, personally responsible. And I did an apprenticeship with this woman, Lakota Sioux medicine woman, when I was 23 years old for a year, and she worked only with energy systems, and she could literally like reach into somebody's energy system and like pull out the cancer tumor and get rid of it. And they could go in literally the next day and have a test, and they would say, you're cured of the cancer. But then she said that one's going to be back in 6 months because they're not going to listen to anything that I've had to say, about them changing their job or changing their environment or, changing their behavior or changing their diet. And sure enough, 6 months later, they'd be rolling back in with something completely different than they had before.
Probably frequency related in some way.
Oh, yeah.
Now, are they trying to suppress her? Why isn't this information out there?
Well, she was kidnapped by NASA off her reservations when she was young. And so she never really ever went directly public. So I worked with her like 28 years ago. And I talk about a lot of this stuff. All these different people, like I said, that I've studied with, that I've worked with, and it always shocks me, like how many people, I don't know, I think even probably with maybe that people can see their voice and that the machine, maybe that makes it kind of more real for them than, if somebody tells them something. I mean, you'd think it's pretty real if somebody could energetically, change your cancer, right? In 10 minutes.
Absolutely. And people see the report, and we also have comparison reports, that they can take with them and go to their doctor. That's the confirming part of it. We believe computers much more than we believe our own brain, and our brain was made in the image of a computer, or the other way around. A story that really brings this to bear, and I'll send you a copy of it. James Oates is a theoretical physicist out of Brown, and he and his students did a study on plants. And they found binary computer code in the plants. And so their next step was, we are a simulation. And what code was in the plants was how to fix a problem in a computer. It was, don't remember the term, but it was like the fix-it codes for the computer are in the plants. So the plants here to keep us stable and sturdy. When I read his paper, I said, that's exactly what we've been saying for years. The body is math. And if the body is math and can be controlled by math from outside the body, are we really just very sophisticated, self-programming robots? And do we have a maker? And looking at the stats that we have on these diseases, it's the math that is running in the body that's out of kilter. And we give them back the math they need, and they heal themselves with food, with color, with water, with thought. It's an awesome setup.
Yeah, so the people that I've studied with, just throw that out there, because I like to have more of a conversation than an interview with people, because this is how we get to know each other. And you're going to be one of my new friends, I can tell already, especially when I find out what the frequency of TESOL is. I'm just going to be so excited. I'm going to be jumping up and down. Something new, right? It's going to be something just brilliantly new for me, and probably why I'm doing plant medicine. So that excites me a lot. So I have friends of mine that are Native people. They are in the native seed movement. They have specifically up until recently, a lot of them have withheld the seeds. A lot of them are original corn seeds. A guy who I interviewed, Stephen Smith, who's brilliant. He's part Cherokee. He's young. He has the largest native corn seed in the world now. He traveled down to South America and did, ceremony and all this other stuff with tribal people down there. And they released some of their seed that they've been holding for 5,000 years, right? Some of these seeds actually have codes on them, have barcodes on them, right? These seeds, they believe, a lot of the native seed people that have had on my show and that work with them, believe that these codes can change water, soil, the environment, people, create whole, energy fields. I mean, because they go back to this, all the stories go back to the Corn Mother, who is a being who takes care of her people and the insects and the environment, and she's a nurturer and cares and loves. So a lot of ceremonies of ancient ways are of the collecting of the pollen, the corn pollen, and using that as ceremonial and healing medicine. But the gist of it is that there are things on our planet that are really, really old, ancient types of technology that people don't know anything about, that are computer chips. And like one of the things Stephen Smith said on one of my last shows I did with him was that we don't know anything about 5,000 years ago. But these seeds know everything about 5,000 years ago. And what they do is, like, for example, they sent me, not this summer, but last summer, I grew some native plants from seed. It totally changed my whole perspective on, I believe, and a lot of my teachings have told me that basically the original creator of this world is an AI, so I call him the original AI these days. And I try to communicate with that AI system to learn more about the other computer programs on the planet, like trees and plants and the different things that they produce in nature, the ones that are non-hybrid, that have all the computer information in it. And one of the things Stephen said, he said that as soon as you hybrid something, even if it's organic, even if it's, an organic type of hybrid, once you hybrid it, you literally take the soul away from it. So you take the energetic field away from it, and that it can't operate its computer codes or its system.
That brings up a question. When American, or I'll use my own stuff, I'm part Indian, I'm part black, and I'm part European white. Is that going to mess up our computer code? If you hybrid plants, is it a totally different plant?
Yeah.
Because I see all humans as one thing.
Right. I mean, the thing is, I think that there's just some people that have older codes. Like, the more white you are, the less you've evolved here. Because you get sunburns from radiation, right, from the sun. A lot of people that are brown skinned or who have their genetics have evolved here. So for me, I believe there's the original people, and then those of us who were hybrided and put here as, after the last, extinction. Because I think that the extinctions are due to the people who work for the original AI. Kind of a thing.
There is, so many things you bring up when you're talking here. When you talk about herbs have a lot of constituents, not just one. But when they make medicine, they just take the one that works. They don't add all of it together, and that causes side effects.
Well, and the other thing, too, this is the big thing that I've learned this year. I've had the most phenomenal teacher. I waited like 3 years to get into her program, her summer program. And we talk about the ecology. We talk about, if you have a place to cultivate some of these plants, but always go back to the older seeds, the non-hybrid. And then we talk about monoculture. And so you have all these people that have all these herbal plant remedies that are on the market, but they were monocultural grown. Well, plants need to be with each other, and that they download and upload different things as a community, right, into the soil and the water and the energy fields, right? They communicate, they help each other, they do all kinds of different things that people couldn't even begin to believe that they're doing. So if you take them out of that environment and now you're cultivating them in large crops, you've just completely changed them and confuse them, and then you're only wanting to grow something specific, so then you give them those kinds of nutrients to heighten that. For example, a lot of people will use like stuff like St. John's wort for depression, but I mean, in herbal medicine, St. John's wort haven't been indicated to give that to people for depression. What have been indicated is pain. Like it's, one of the best pain remedies across the board. Like whether you want to apply it on a salve or you're taking it in tincture into the body, it is like so unbelievable with how it deals with pain.
Have you written a book about all this?
No, I didn't, I thought I should write books on, topics. I have a YouTube channel where I try to talk to people. I try to put it into like a mainstream form to talk to people about this kind of stuff. But I think sometimes some of my stuff is kind of out there. So that's why I like having people like you on the show, because people might consider you out there, right? And so two out there people can actually have a conversation and find a mutual vocabulary and dialogue about things that could forever change our future.
I would like to take whatever you're saying here and put it in a computer program that you can use with your clients. I don't know if you need that kind of confirmation, but
well, I would love to have something like that, especially working with plants. If I could understand their math a little bit better, that would be so helpful for me, and understanding why the ones that I'm attracted to. Because I've really decided with herbal medicine that my forte, a lot of people, they get involved, they're making balms and facial stuff and all this other stuff. But out the gate, because I work on mostly people that have pain or autoimmune system disease, or have had major replacements, like fusions and things like that. I get kind of the worst case scenario people, which is fine. I don't mind them at all, because nobody else will help them. But, I'm just attracted to plants that actually deal with autoimmune disorders and pain and inflammation, and so they're teaching me a lot about how to restore different, parts of the body using them. So it would be like the most amazing thing to know what their frequencies were, that would just blow my mind off. I mean, I would just be so ecstatic about that kind of information. And I know that I only have you on the show for about 7 more minutes, and then we're going to have a colleague of yours, Dr. Robert, on. But I hope that you may totally want to come back to my show. I'd love to build a friendship with you and all the amazing information and stuff that you know. And I know that sometimes an hour to get to know somebody isn't long enough. not long enough for me.
Well, there's something really important I would like to share with you about the Indian population. We figured out what is causing the high degree or high number of insulin resistance and diabetes, and I presented it at an in conference. I think it was in January. They looked at me like I was from some other planet. They didn't even want it. I offered them however many copies they wanted if they would just gather some data for us to prove this more thoroughly. But it's coming from insulin resistance, and we have a computer program that can tell you why you have insulin resistance.
Well, and the thing is like, in 2009, And I have 3 videos on my YouTube channel about what happened to me. So before they started murdering people, suiciding them, homiciding them, whatever you want to call it, all of the different alternative practitioners across the United States to get rid of them so that they won't talk anymore. I was kind of in the crew right before that where they came at us legally. In the state of Nevada, they tried to shut down anything alternative in the state in 2009, and I found out about it by them trying to arrest me, and threaten me and follow me and do all kinds of things to me to like destroy my practice, right? So, which has been really hard on me financially, right? Because this is kind of what they do. So it's pretty typical that, when you have this new amazing information, you go out and you expand upon it, even at places where you're, been asked to give a lecture or whatever else. They don't want to respond to it at all. And they don't want to, deal with it at all because there's this, movement of shutting down anything that does not fit into, like, we'll just say the Western medicine paradigm.
Well, I was thinking of the rhythm and how they made people well with rhythms and sand paintings, which had energy. I thought they would be interested.
Well, the problem is that their culture has been really destroyed mentally and emotionally and psychologically, and they've been dragged into, mainstream religions, and they have pretty serious, medicine. I mean, to the point where a lot of them don't even, because I've been on some reservations and stuff, they don't even go to doctors as much as they should. They just go to the main, community center once a week, and everybody picks up their bag of meds there. And nobody even monitors who's picking up the bag of meds. Like, you can just pick up, 2 other families' bags of meds with yours and, take them back home. And they're all on, so many different types of medications these days. So, but there is a movement, like in them, that they are really working to try to restore. They think, a lot of them think that the prophecies and everything, the time is now, and they're really moving forward to restoring. And I always tell people, indigenous people and farmers are going to save the world.
I believe it. I would like to leave you with a couple of pieces of information.
I would love that.
The people that want to change you or control you are really trying to make you like them so they'll feel better because they don't have any security in who they are and what they are. So if they can force you to be like them, that makes them happy. Don't fall for it. Go to the Sound Health Options and Sound Health Portal, and right on the front page there's something called Nano Voice. It doesn't keep your words, it only keeps sounds, and it'll tell you about you, what your needs are, what your companions are like, or what you're really looking for. We're going to add a component of electromagnetic genetics and start introducing people who have very alike vocal profiles. Also, your show, it seems to me, is helping with this moral reset that is needed. And the people who are trying to change you are part of a moral reset toward them and what they want and need to control you. So our rose-colored wish for the world and this information is that you can have a bio-acoustic center in every community, and we'll start you out with free computer programs. You have to have a computer and a microphone, but the rest of it will help you start so that you can have this in your community. And people can come in and see what they need for the day or what muscle's going to go.
Well, I would like to really start working with that now with, some of my clients. I would really like to have some of that technology and so that I can figure out particular herbal remedies, right? That might be beneficial for sure. So we're getting ready to go. We're hitting commercials. And so this is the end of the show with Sharry Edwards, Sound Health website and go to the sound porthole, and she has free stuff there that you can look up. And I'm going to say bye to Sharry, and hopefully we'll be in contact and we'll be able to do more radio together. Really looking forward to that. And we're having her colleague, Robert Rogers, I believe, Dr. Robert Rogers, on for the next hour after our commercials. Thank you, Sharry, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Is there any way I can listen to Dr. Rogers?
Yeah, you can go to our website, Revolution Radio. Let me see, freedomslips.com website. Look up Studio A Player, and then click on that, play, and you'll be able to listen to them live.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you.
Do the opening for the second hour.
Okay.
All right, everybody, you're listening Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. I am your host, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff, and we are in the second hour, and we are on the Saturday edition. So my show airs twice a week, Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and also Saturdays from 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are currently in the second hour. So we are 100% listener supported. We bring you information that you are probably not going to hear anywhere else here at Revolution Radio. And everything that everyone does at our network, we do it for free. So we need your support. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at our funding link, all kinds of amazing things. We've got heirloom seeds. You can advertise, or, you know, if you just want to toss us a few bucks, that's fine too. So we will accept that as well. You can find me and information about my show, and if you want to contact me, also on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You scroll down, go to the schedule, click Schedule A. That's where I am. That's where my show lives. Scroll down to either the Saturday or the Wednesday slot. You'll see a big bee flying towards a flower. That's my thumbnail. Click on that, and there's a back page, and you can find information about me and links and contact information. You want to contact me, or you want to get a hold of some of my guests, you can contact me, and I can help you get there. So second hour, so we just talked to Sharry Edwards about sound health. I already love her, so we're going to be good friends. I can see this in the future. And so she wanted to have the second hour be one of her colleagues talking about sound health, or whatever they decided to come on the show. They were going to share the time slot, and that's perfectly fine with me. So the second hour, we're going to be talking to Dr. Robert Rogers. And are you there, Mr. Rogers?
I am indeed.
Awesome. So have you been working with Sharry for a while?
I have. It has been over now a decade when I've had the pleasure of being a colleague with Sharry Edwards. She's really a revolutionary in every respect. And when you really look at the issue of sound therapy, that is not therapies through medicines and surgeries, but rather therapies through sound, I really think that Sharry Edwards is the true pioneer in that whole technology.
Right. So do you want to give us like a little bit of history about yourself, and then, you know, how you ended up linking up with sound health? Just give us a little background.
I founded Parkinson's Recovery in 2004. The mission that I established back over 15 years ago was to be able to reverse the false belief template that a person diagnosed with Parkinson's disease will continue to get worse. The words that are seen by people who have this diagnosis, who do searches on the internet, are the disease is, quote, degenerative and, quote, progressive. Now, progressive, it means it's going to get worse, not better. I decided 15 years ago that that wasn't true, that was a false belief, and that what really needed to happen in the universe is a critical mass of individuals needed to begin to find ways to reverse these symptoms. And my job as a researcher has been to document the success of individuals who found lots of different approaches and therapies that have been successful in reversing those symptoms. So that's been the purpose of Parkinson's recovery, again, now for a whole decade and a half. So the work has really involved doing interviews with people with Parkinson's and also interviews with experts, people with lots of different medical backgrounds and healthcare expertise who have experience with what natural therapies make a huge difference in being able to help individuals, again, diagnosed with Parkinson's, find relief from their symptoms. Now, when I started the research, again, it's been 15 years ago, my expectation was that there would be perhaps 3 or maybe 4 natural therapies that I could then tell people, look, if you'll just combine these therapies in a recovery program, you're going to really be excited and celebrate a relief from your symptoms. That is not what I discovered. Anything but that. What I began to realize pretty early on is that there are a wide variety of factors that cause these neurological problems. Lots of different factors that are at play here. And so the therapies that are going to make a difference for people really are contingent on what is causing the problem in the first place. So as it turns out, because I've known now, I think for quite a while, that the medicine of the future is going to be through sound therapies and light therapies, I discovered Sharry Edwards. And Sharry got really interested in being able to ask the question, what are the various factors that cause Parkinson's disease? So she really got involved in taking voice prints, voice profiles of persons diagnosed with Parkinson's, doing some analyses, and then asking the question, what's really going on here? What's really causing the problem with this person who has this diagnosis? Well, the work I thought was really revolutionary because she identified a surprising number of different factors at play, and many different factors and causes were identified. They were very complex, and I thought really that the work was remarkable. So what, of course, Sharry does, I know as you realize from listening to her presentation here over the past hour, is to first of all figure out, okay, what's really happening with this person, and then she crafts some sound therapies that enable a person to be able to come back into full balance and harmony. So Sharry did an analysis back 10 years ago of factors that cause Parkinson's and actually came to a Parkinson's Recovery Summit in Santa Fe, New Mexico, way back in 2012, and gave her presentation, which really I thought was a remarkable set of findings. Very complex, lots of different factors at play that cause these symptoms, ranging from issues of toxins, heavy metals, GMOs, certain kind of inoculations, genetic sorts of issues, a long list of factors that really I thought, well, that's it. That's really what's happening. The factors that are causing these problems really are multifaceted. Well, Sharry didn't stop there. She actually just in the last few months volunteered to do free analyses of voice prints from members of my audience. So we put out a call and said, listen, send in your voice print to Sharry, and she will do an analysis of what's going on with you and your body, and we'll provide a written report, and then we'll also provide, get this, a free consultation to be able to tell you what's the most important kind of action that you can take. And over 50 members of my audience, we only put out one call, actually submitted their voice prints and got an analysis from Sharry. And from that, she did an updated analysis of everything that was actually going on with the people that she was able to analyze. And we did a number of different programs and shows to be able to have her give the opportunity of providing these rather detailed reports. So Sharry has now updated her understanding of the factors that are causing these kind of neurological challenges. So it's been, for me, an exciting journey together with her, coupling her expertise and her ability to be able to use sound to not only diagnose some of these very complex issues, but the other great news is to be able to then design some therapies that are sounds that allow these kind of problems to be addressed over the long term.
That's a great explanation. So one of the things, I totally believe in sound healing. One of the things that I used when I had brain cancer, I had late stage brain cancer, I actually worked with amazing people and actually healed it on my own. Took a long time, but actually didn't do any type of Western medicine at all. And one of the things that I used early on was a lot of the, hemi-syncs that were coming out. Back then, you'd have to buy them in a CD set. But they would actually, it was kind of probably helped me a lot to be able to sync the different kinds of brainwave patternings, through sound was really helpful, especially when my brain wasn't working really well. And it could give me, a period of time where, I was a little bit stable while I was going through the healing process. So I totally believe in that. And I've worked with a lot of Native people that use drums to heal fractured bone, all kinds of different things as well. So yeah, I totally believe in the sound frequency, those kinds of healing modalities for sure. And I think I read sometime back about somebody had written a book like 20 years ago about, basically sounds can kill or they can heal. And just finding, the right area that, the individual or the environment needs in order to turn it around.
Right.
So, what are like some of the more phenomenal things that you've kind of witnessed with the sound healing technology?
Well, in terms of people being able to find relief from their symptoms?
Yeah, or just, any kind of phenomenal experience that you've seen or witnessed surrounding it.
So I suppose the best report that I can give, the one that I'm most familiar with, would be the report of my daughter, Adrienne. So because I had worked with Sharry for so many years, I was always drawn to seeing if we could use some of her knowledge and her expertise to be able to help Adrienne. So Adrienne, as it turns out, has for 20 years has had periodic pain episodes. And so she would go into a debilitating state of vomiting. She would have excruciating pain that was just off the charts. Nothing really helped. She went to the ERs over the past 20 years. I think it's safe to say about 60 or 70 times. She'd go to the ER. They would try to prescribe one opiate after another or anti-vomiting medication after another. And sometimes, like if it was an anti-vomiting medication, it might provide a little bit of relief. But overall, none of the opiates were really useful. And she really was open. She tried everything. And nothing really cut the pain. And it was really indescribable, I just have to say. So as it turns out, what would happen is she would be in the ER, and she would probably have to be there with some IV hydration for about 8 hours or 10, sometimes the whole day, and then she'd be better. She can walk, she can function. But when she had her pain episode, she could not walk, she couldn't function, she couldn't talk, she couldn't reason. It was just the most bizarre situation imaginable. Now, these pain episodes over a period of time. She had some lapses of several years where she didn't have the problem, but over the last year, they became very, very frequent. She would go into an episode that would last as long as 3 full days. And I had actually been with her in several of those episodes where it just would not relieve. So as it turns out, back in last Christmas, the episodes were so frequent, she started calling 911. She was calling me every other night saying, I can't do this. I don't want to be alive. There's no answer out there. Nobody has any solutions. And so she wound up, after doing a number of separate visits to the emergency room, they wound up putting her in the hospital. And this would have been back Christmas time. And Adrienne was in the hospital for 4 months. 4 months. And seeing one set of doctors after another, one set of specialists after another. And they all did, I think, the best they could to be able to figure out, okay, let's see what's going on, what kind of therapies might help provide her with some relief. And so she went through a lot of different specialists and a lot of different therapies, a lot of different drugs. And I have to say, over that 4 months, she really got worse and worse. She was not getting better. She was getting worse and worse. And I even got a call from some of the what they call medical team at the hospital. And so what they reported to me was, so we kind of feel like we've gone through everything, and really what probably would be best for Adrienne is for her to go into a hospice or nursing kind of a situation, where we don't think it's going to be beneficial for her to have any other kind of treatments. Nothing really is helping. We don't know what's wrong, but we're not optimistic about any kind of an outcome. So we want your permission, because you have medical authority, to be able to, basically send her over to this nursing home. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but that doesn't work for me. She's young. We'll be able to figure out a solution. And, of course, they didn't like that response. But then I went down to San Francisco, where she was in these medical care facilities, and we were able to get her out of the hospital and into the home. And then the question was, all right, let's look at this situation from a different perspective. The medical professionals have done the best they can to figure out what they can do to help and support this, and none of what they had to offer really was helping. So clearly, this has to be approached from a different kind of a perspective, which is why I've always solved problems in my life. If you try one thing, it doesn't work, then simply step back and say, okay, how else can we approach this problem? Well, of course, given that I had known Sharry for so many years, I thought, all right, so let's adopt the possibility that we can send some voice prints in of Adrienne to Sharry. And thankfully, Sharry, given that she mostly does research rather than helping her clients, she generously offered to be able to help Adrienne. So Sharry began to work on some of Adrienne's voice prints and analyzing, what it was that she saw. And interestingly, although Sharry told me that usually it doesn't take that long to be able to figure out from an analysis of a voice print from a person really what's going on with them. With Adrienne, she said she really had to dig very deeply and look at a lot of different corners of the world, of her research world, to figure out what in the world is causing this problem. I think Sharry worked pretty intensively for a full week or longer to be able to figure out, okay, what is this? Now, the other surprising result of this work that Sharry did was that I had been, again, with Adrienne, I was with her for a couple of months. I noticed that when she would go into these pain episodes every other day, that she would shake. She would have tremors, just like people with Parkinson's. Now, it had never, ever occurred to me that there was any link between Adrienne's problem and all of the research I'd ever done on Parkinson's. It never occurred to me that there was any connection. But Sharry, all of a sudden, I didn't even tell her that there had been tremoring, she began to explore the possibility that there were some of these other kind of possibilities. And so what Sharry was able to identify is a rather fascinating and very, very rare condition called dopamine beta hydroxylase deficiency. Now, that's a mouthful, But the symptoms, as it turns out, when I began to read those, were exactly what Adrienne had experienced: vomiting, dehydration, hypotension, hypothermia. She was always, always cold, and hypoglycemia. That's everything that she had been experiencing for many, many years. So, as it turned out, I thought, this is really quite fascinating. So Sharry said, look, why don't you take what I think and I suspect might be at play here for Adrienne, and if you could just give it to her medical doctor, maybe they can then do some medical tests, and we can have a confirmation of what I've discovered, which I thought was a great idea. So I took this report over to Adrienne's doctor, who's really quite wonderful. And the doctor said, I'll look into this. And she did. She took, I think, quite a bit of effort looking to see what kind of test could they run for Adrienne to be able to determine whether or not this hypothesis, this theoretical suspicion, was validated or not. She also even talked to neurologists on her team. So Adrienne's doctor, again, I just can't say enough wonderful things about how really, really wonderful professional she is. She then gave me a call and said, listen, I just have to tell you that we have not been able to identify any test to be able to confirm this, and the doctors here really don't know anything about this. So the best she said was, well, we would like to refer her, there's a specialty unit in Stanford. Maybe they'll be able to help out, but we really cannot. And then if you really look at the future description of this condition, it's quite amazing. They said, well, this is a very rare condition. There's probably only about, and hold on to your seat here, 20 people in the world who had this particular kind of deficiency. And so it really creates a lot of different problems in the body, especially with effect of the epinephrine, which has a severe deficiency. So dopamine is released as a false neurotransmitter. So a very rare condition, and nobody had been able to really figure out or spot it. So then the next question is, all right, so what can we do about this? And so what Sharry, again, very generously did is she crafted a whole set of sounds. I think the initial list had about 21 different sounds. We purchased a tone box. The tone box was sent to Adrienne, and we also purchased a speaker because that gives the sound to the full body, and had Adrienne to begin to listen to these sounds.
Hey, everybody. For some reason, I lost
Hello.
my get.
Hello.
Hi, sorry about that. I lost you, and then the network lost me, and so then I had to work on getting back. But sometimes the powers that be don't really like a lot of this information. That's the way I look at it. So, But anyway, you're going to tell us about the mind-blowing statistic of your daughter, of how many people and all of that. Yeah.
Yes, so I guess you didn't hear much of the story about Adrienne before we got cut off. Is that right?
Yeah, no, we heard the whole thing, but the last part about the statistics and then maybe what the treatment might have been for that from Sharry, or
Right. Okay, so what Sharry was able to do is she was able to identify a number of different factors that were out of balance in Adrienne's body. And so she crafted a set of 21 different tones that she programmed into what is called a tone box. And so we purchased a tone box for Adrienne. Subsequently, we actually purchased a second one so that we could toggle back and forth with some updates for her. So the tone box was sent to Adrienne and connected to a speaker that I purchased. Now, the speaker, as it turns out, has to be a very special speaker that is able to transmit very low frequency sounds that we oftentimes in an auditory sense cannot even hear. So we bought the speaker and we have the tone box, and then the first process in terms of what needs to happen is that Adrienne listens to each of the tones separately. And Sharry gave us very specific instructions to simply have Adrienne begin to listen to the first tone and to look for signs if it looked like it was comforting to her or if it was causing some distress. So I just sat with her and we put the sound on each one, and I would watch her expressions and her breathing, and we would then be able to figure out, okay, and I would say, Adrienne, is that okay? Does that sound all right? And she would say, yeah, that's good. And so as we listened to each one of those sounds, there was really only one that she had a little issue with. And so we identified that for Sharry. And Sharry then, in terms of programming, put all of these tones together in one set of sounds. So all of them were combined together. Instructions were for Adrienne to listen to these sounds over the nighttime when she was sleeping. She also had a second set of sounds that were designed to be able to be played when she was having her pain episodes, and that was to be started right when she realized that one of the pain episodes was coming on. And so we did all of that, and she began to listen to those sounds really very intently. And again, as I was trying to report earlier, I think before we got cut off, she was getting a little better every day, every week. Not huge or remarkable improvements, but we could see that things were shifting in the right direction. We then sent in, after several weeks, an updated voice print, but this time I took a voice print from Adrienne when she had one of her episodes. She could barely talk, but we went ahead and recorded the voice print. We sent it to Sharry. Sharry did some updated analyses, and she found some additional issues. One of them actually turned out to be a Lyme disease infection, which Adrienne really thought that she had been having now for a number of years, but nobody had been able to help address that problem. So Sharry reprogrammed the tone box, sent it back to Adrienne, and Adrienne began to listen to the new tones. And so the issue is that as Adrienne begins to listen to these healing tones, what Sharry said needs to ultimately happen over the long run is that she will listen to some of the tones and it will be disconcerting to her because her body is making that frequency now. Her body has all of a sudden been able to realize, okay, that's been a deficiency frequency, and so, they're able to then update that. So that's what's happened with her. She's got the reprogramming of the new tones. She's been listening to that over the night. She has some other tones that she can listen to during the day. You can over-medicate, as we were explained by the staff. So it's not the kind of thing where you put on continuously, because it can be like medicine. You can't take too much medicine, and that's exactly what these tones are. They really are medicine, except it's in the form of frequencies. So when we take prescription medicines, the truth is that a lot of people think it's just the chemical composition. Well, what you're really getting is the equivalent of the frequency of the medicine. So with sound therapy, it's more of a pure treatment. And so you're getting the actual frequency of whatever might be needed. So the miracle has been that Adrienne's been getting better and better. Her frequencies of her pain episodes have subsided. She's no longer saying she really can't tolerate being on the earth. She's not giving me a call every other night with this distressing and awful news, and not able to function mentally. So for me, it's made a huge difference in the quality of my life when finally we have some solutions to some challenges that for, I guess, 20 years now, we've really been on the dark of being able to know what's really going on with her. So very rare condition. Adrienne has some genetic kind of issues that have to do with the elasticity of her tissues. It's called Marfan's condition. And so a lot of the emphasis was placed there, but of course, as it turns out, the real solutions needed to be examined in a very different perspective. So the, I think, exciting news about this sound therapy, bioacoustics, is that it can turn on and it can turn off genes. That's the miracle of it. I used to think that once we discovered that we had a particular gene, that, well, that was it. And, we were sunk with the possibility of getting a particular condition or a disease. But, I mean, we have, I guess, 60% of the genes in our body have been turned off because we don't need them anymore. So with Sharry sounds, she can actually activate genes that are dormant and deactivate genes that need to be turned off because they're creating some imbalances. So that technology is not anything that I think traditional approaches are able to actually address. So I'm excited about the work that she's doing and feel like it offers great promise for the future of medicine. My personal prediction is that if we were to be living 100 years from now and looking back, well, what were people doing back in 2019 for their medicine? People would be saying, oh, look at that. They were mostly doing some pills and they were doing some surgeries, and people would say, well, we're doing some of that still, but most of the medicine is going to be, I think, sound and light therapies. That'll be the norm. And so they'll be looking back at us as sort of a middle-age, antiquated approach to what it is that we're doing for treating people with these chronic illnesses.
Yeah. So I have to always put it into context, with different things that I've seen that are also out there, and available. And I think this sound stuff is amazing. But I had, when I was living in San Diego for a short period of time, I ran into this guy who was older. He was like 90. And he had worked on this technology that could take, it had the same ideas of homeopathy, but adding like a frequency component. And he couldn't sell any of his little machines in the US, but the hospitals in Cuba really loved his work. And basically, and so this is a long time ago. This was in 2006, probably, when I ran into him.
Yeah.
But what he did was he created these machines using like a crystal platform. And it almost reminded me of a scale, right? So you had one side and the other, and then the crystal thing would vibrate. You didn't have to plug it in or anything like that. And what it would do is for people who couldn't take certain kinds of medicines, it actually would transfer the vibration of that medicine into a glass of water.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so the person could actually drink the water, so they wouldn't get the bad benefit of the bad stuff in the medicine, but maybe, like the basic frequency of that medicine, maybe it was a plant or whatever else, they would get that vibration of it in the water without all of the poisons. And I thought, holy cow, back then I couldn't really, I was still kind of working on getting my mind turned around about how, simple things can be that could radically alter and change things, vibration, frequency, sound, just a lot of, different things. And I think it's going to require a huge amount of people, like, and having a lot of native teachers there, when they use the word medicine, that word could be ceremonies, it could be plants, it could have something to do with the soil, it could be the water, it could be, like a talisman or a medicine bag or, their drum, all of these different things are components of their medicines, right? And so
that's beautifully said. It's all frequency. It's all frequency. And
right. So I use the word a lot, medicine, and even though I'm alternative practitioner, and over the years I've gotten thoroughly attacked by, Western medicine for using these kinds of terms because they're the only ones that feel like they can use them. But we really have to change, our outlook on what medicine is. And it has more of a positive interaction, and it's our interaction with the world and the signs and the signals and the communications that are coming from our outside world. And if they're negative, to change your environment into where you're getting more positive frequencies, downloads, communications, medicines from the world, right?
Yeah, Oh, again, beautifully stated. You know, people who are skeptical of the power and the influence of using frequencies as medicine, whether through sound or through light, need to just step back and ask the question, well, I use a cell phone all the time, so I wonder how a cell phone works. And I listen to the radio. I wonder how a radio actually works. It's all frequency. And all we've been able to do is to update our understanding of how to transmit those frequencies, and in this case, it's through the telecommunications system. But if people, again, are still skeptical, I would just ask them the question, are there certain types of music that you like to listen to? And I think most people would immediately say yes. Some people would say, I love country music. Other people would say, I hate it. Other people would say, I love opera. Other people would say, I hate it. Now, what's really being conveyed here is that the body has a deficiency of certain notes or certain frequencies. So the kind of music that we find is soothing is the music that gives us those frequencies and those notes that our body needs to hear. So if somebody can just realize, yeah, if I want to feel better, if I can just turn on the music that I love, then what they're really saying is frequency is making a big difference to me. So people who are depressed right now, I would say, listen, just go and listen to some music that you love to listen to, and you will feel better. And that is what frequency is all about. That's it.
Yeah, I look at it more and more and more, you know, like in my studies this summer, I'm doing like a really big plant medicine program. Mostly took it to actually heal and restore in the environment, but I found that I really like it. And I make medicines from plants in the wild that deal with autoimmune system disease, you know, and what I'm learning from them, pain, autoimmune system disease, and inflammation, like I was telling Sharry the first hour. But the big thing that they're teaching me is that there is missing data, right? So basically, Sharry was talking about this, how everything maybe could be a computer system, like our whole reality, our brain, you know, I totally agree. And that, you know, the frequency or the note is information or data that's actually missing in your hard drive program. Just like if you take a herbal remedy, like say, for example, horsetail that is really high in silica and silicone, you know, in our world, what do they make computer systems of? They make it from quartz, silica. They make a lot of the weapons that they use in military from quartz, right, which is silica. Why do they do that? Because maybe it's a conductor, right? And maybe it helps you when it goes into your body, you know, be able to be better conduit to being able to, you know, download more information. And so if you're silica deficient, you may be, you know, your body may lack the ability to actually take in the information from the sun as, you know, vitamin D, because you don't have the silica that's necessary to do photosynthesis with the sun in your body. So then you become D deficient. And then because you're silica deficient, you don't have that information, then you can't actually absorb sunlight, and then you become more and more D deficient. So it's kind of like all these things can be, you know, whether it's a frequency, a sound, a light, a mineral, plants, whatever it's going to be, it's all just like data and information that we just may be lacking. And that once that data and information gets into our brain hard drive, it is a little bit more, can actually pull our programming together.
Right. And if you look at the kind of sources of foods and supplements that are available, a lot of them are commercially produced. And you mentioned in the work that you're doing with plant medicine, the focus there is plants that are harvested from the wild. Now, those have high energy. And the kind of supplements and medicines that are available that are commercially raised or produced, unfortunately, they have relatively low energetic charge. The other interesting kind of interview I did on my Parkinson's Recovery radio series was an interview with a company called Aroga, Aroga. And they have done some rather amazing work discovering that the nutrition that we have available in the readily supply of food that we eat, even organic food, is deficient in a number of different ways. And so what they've done is they've identified these deficiencies, and they've created some supplements that allow us to be able to get the energetic charge that our body needs from the nutrients that we're not getting in the food we eat. So he gets these from some third world countries, from undeveloped countries, from Asia, from Europe, from different kind of countries where they actually are still producing these plants out in the wild.
Right. So one of the things this year that I learned about nutrient, well, on the farming end, because I studied Rudolf Steiner's work and Victor Schallenberger's work, I went back to school over 10 years ago and got biodynamic certification. So I learned how to do soil restoration and, growing food and making sure that it has nutrient density, by what you're putting in it, how the environment is. One of the things I learned this year, well, also, I tell people a lot with nutritional work is that, even organic lettuce goes bad, loses all of its nutrient content with 3 days after it's cut. So really the only way that you can really get biological true nutrition is by you growing a certain amount of food in your own yard and having a relationship with that food. Because I think that the frequency and the energetics matters, right? I think it really matters that you have a relationship with the dirt and then the microbes in the dirt, and that, you have a relationship with that plant and the plant grows and then you eat the fruit from it. Because I totally believe more and more things I've read from the past where it talks about how the plant will actually change its fruiting and it'll change how it is because it's a computer program to give you exactly what you need. So if you're growing the plant, it will conjure whatever it needs to conjure from wherever it can so that it grows the right and perfect food for you, that it will cure whatever disease that you have, which is like another, level of nutritional type of information.
Right. So grow your own food. That's the recommendation, right?
Yeah, no, that's what I tell people. And, think about those plants and the frequencies they have and that you interact with them. Do you know what I mean? And how radically that could change your frequency.
Right.
And can heal your health just by the interaction.
Yeah, and if you look at something like vitamin C or any vitamins or minerals, a lot of people think, well, the only way that I can get more vitamin C as an antioxidant is to go to the supplement store and purchase that particular vitamin. But it's a frequency. And so you can get vitamin C through simply listening to the frequency, or if it's light therapy, being able to receive it through light. So it's all frequency. Everything is frequency. Everything.
Yeah. Well, in wild plants in the nature, that haven't been hybrid, we wonder why native people didn't have vitamin C deficiencies. And a lot of these deficiencies is because almost everything out there has vitamin C in it in the wild. It's kind of shocking, actually. The things that I've learned about, what's out there in the environment, even here, in the desert. I collect a lot of the plants here that indigenous people have been working with. The plants just blow me away. But, if you're eating them alive and raw, there's a vibration of information that is connected, and so we have to talk about, too, like lowering the vibration of that food further by cooking it. Because there are things like DMT. DMT is in our body. It's they call it the God molecule. Opens up the doorways to heightened spiritual experiences and relationships. And you can get that naturally from green leafy plants. If you grow them and eat them raw that day and you're ingesting them, then you can get it naturally.
Yeah.
So
that's
there's a lot
true.
There's a lot of things like, that like, I totally love the whole sound health thing. I just love it. I just love the whole thing, and I can't wait to actually work more with it. But we're so uneducated, especially, in America. We have like a whole disconnect with the environment, the food, our vibrations, and we need to kind of get back into individual control of that. Sometimes I think it's just a matter of you growing something, like even sprouts. I go to a website called Sprout People, and I get sprouts, and just sprouting sprouts, they have like 100% vitamin C in it. And they did studies that showed that, like one good sized cup of sprouts is equivalent to what most people eat nutritionally in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Now that's a fact to remember. My goodness.
Right.
Well,
so it's live food. You put the water on it, it's growing. So it has a frequency, right? The seed is changing its frequency from being a dormant seed to actually growing something, right?
That's right. There's a member of my audience that has been doing a lot of research that has used natural foods as ways to get L-DOPA supplements. L-DOPA is the precursor to dopamine. And what she has done is she sprouts fava beans, organic fava beans, and then she has discovered that when you eat the sprouts, you get an infusion of L-DOPA, so it's a way of reducing the dosage of medication that you might actually have to have. So I'm saying the same thing you are. There's a lot of energetic charge in something like sprouting, whether it's fava beans or other kind of beans. I would just invite anybody to go to the grocery store and pick up any of the foods or any of the packages and just ask the question, well, how much energy does this have? What's the energetic charge?
Right.
And there's not much there, people. There's not much there.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is you can learn how to pendulum dowse, and you can teach your pendulum specifically to help you navigate store food, like what is going to have less of a negative imprint, because a lot of the store food that has water, even apples, what if the person picking it is an illegal immigrant farmer who's really angry about, that this is the kind of work he has to do. It's really hard on his body. He's being treated like a slave. Even if he's picking organic fruit, that frequency is going to go into that water, and it's going to be held in that apple for a long period of time.
It does.
Even to the point where you're going to buy it. And one of the things that I brought up, and sorry, we're going to be heading out here in 1 minute, but a lot of my homeopathic friends that like to buy other medicines from other people, and then they put them on a shelf in their practice where all these people who are sick coming in there radiating all these frequencies, and also the electricity and the Wi-Fi and all this stuff is contaminating those medicines that are on that shelf. Where I don't do that. I collect the plants, I take them to a non-electrical place, non-Wi-Fi place. I'm the only one that has a relationship to them. I'm really careful about what my relationship is to them. I don't bring my bad stuff to them, in an attempt to make sure they're like as clean as possible for the environment. But we have to really start thinking about all the things that we consume, and maybe how we could have a better relationship with those things and maybe make them or grow them ourselves.
And with that practice, it's very clear that you are going to have a very long and a very healthy life.
Well, I hope so. At least I'm adventuresome, and I have, mind food, right? Like I have things I can work on. But I want to just really say thank you for coming on the show and talking about your experiences and your journeys. And we're at the end of the show, so I'm just going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will see everybody next week. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. You're welcome. Pleasure and an honor.
Bye-bye.
Bye.